They need to know what those retailers are expecting, what are the fines they can get if they don't produce on their contracts. So there's a lot of things that they need to know before committing to it to make sure that everything's okay.
Hi there, food enthusiasts. My name is Chris Raczkowski, your host again today for the FutureFoodCast, where we talk with thought leaders in today's food industry and discuss the trends and technologies that will shape the future of food. Very, very happy to be speaking with Tammy Brideau today. She is the Executive Director of Food and Beverage Atlantic. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
So I think we like on this program to, as we get started, to help the audience learn a little bit about our guests. So, maybe before we dive into the activities of Food and Beverage Atlantic, tell us a little bit about what you were doing before you got started in this executive director role and kind of what led you up to jumping into this activity.
Certainly, Jim. So basically, I've been working in the food and beverage industry for 25 years. And my first roles were working in restaurants. So I worked in restaurants and I always wanted to open my own restaurant. So I kind of went through different positions doing so. So I was a manager of a restaurant. I took a course in small and medium businesses. And I also did my course as a sommelier, so a wine specialist. So being a manager in a restaurant and so on, I learned quickly that it's very intensive job or career. And then there was a new program at NB Liquor that they were looking for product advisors. So as a product advisor, you'd help clients select their wine selection, beer and scotch and so on. So I learned a lot about other products than wine as well. And then I got into, I was recruited actually to be a wine representative or a district manager for a wine company in Nova Scotia. So I did that for a few years and then I missed home. So I came back and then I was doing that part-time with another company of wine and then ended up being the executive director for the Shediac Lobster Festival. And also creating two other festivals, so Ocean Festive and Chocoloco. So basically been, every time I was in these positions, it was always to support and promote local products. So every time I started a new festival, it's like make sure that all the local products were available for people to try and see and learn about and so on. And then I started a little company called Taste This. It was walking food tours and bus tours so that people can, it was always a surprise. So it was like, you don't know where you're going. So we'd bring them to different areas to try new foods and beverages in the local area. And people were amazed of what we have that they don't know, right? So we always think everybody knows about my company, but really they don't. They're really creatures of habit. So that was really interesting because people were like, I didn't know we had that like 10 minutes from Moncton or, so that's how I got into food. It was all through these different careers of food and beverage. And then this opportunity came and one of my friends, chefs, the Kilted chef in Nova Scotia, said, there's a position that you might be interested in. So basically this is where I'm at now with Food and Beverage Atlantic.
Well, it's, I think for those of us that don't, fill these roles that you're working in, is like, it sounds amazing to be responsible for a lobster festival and a wine company is like, but the fact is, of course, there's a lot of hard work behind it, but it must be a pleasure to kind of be at the event and kind of be in the center of that. Sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's always been delicious. And it's always nice to hear the stories behind the companies too. Like, how did they, create this beer? How did they create this delectable dessert? Like there's always the stories behind that makes it more, people remember it more. So because we're so creatures of habit, it's always being in the front end and, showcasing your products. So it's really fun to be able to help them with that.
So you've taken this experience and passion and sort of rolled it into the organization that you're executive director of now. And maybe tell us a bit more about what that organization does and the types of companies that you represent.
Yeah, certainly. So basically Food and Beverage Atlantic, it's a nonprofit association. It did start just New Brunswick, but then we fast realized that it was a need for Atlantic. It started in 1999. I've only been with Food and Beverage Atlantic for 3 years now. So still fairly new. Learned a lot of ropes of exporting and so on, but basically what Food and Beverage does is really facilitate and support manufacturers in the food and beverage industries. So it could be wineries, distilleries, breweries, and also, bakeries, seafood plants. We represent it all. So we have a vast majority. We have about 230 members now. We started at 135 when I was just starting. So we grew in 3 years. We do the support in various ways. So we help them to find new distribution, visibility on TV, like the CTV, What's for Dinner. The distribution could be with Sobeys. We have a Sobeys pitch that we organize for to get new members as well, but for members to be able to get into Sobeys, educate them of what to do, what not to do, schedule the meeting with them, and then they go on and send the samples so that Sobeys can try it to see if it's something that they're interested in, and then they pitch to them. So, and then we do the food safety. We've been renowned for years for the food safety training that we do, and members get, discounts for being a member of ours to participate in the food security that they need to do for their products. So all in all, we do also trade missions in different countries to see what the needs are. We send surveys, and then we kind of organize events and B2Bs to really help them grow and flourish. And whatever the need is, we try to create it or look where it could be found at to help them grow.
So it seems, in addition to your personal experience, you're right in the flow of all these companies in the food space and really helping them, as you said, to grow, which means, it's essentially your mandate to be fully aware of what are the trends today, what are the trends tomorrow, and sustainability sounds like it's an important part of your local food system, but also certainly you're involved with technologies that are helping these companies to grow and maybe recommending them and advising on them. So perfect positioning for this podcast, where that's exactly what we're focusing on. What do you see today as some of the key trends with the companies you're working with in terms of what's driving their business forward in the food space? What's hot today, and that you think is going to continue to be important, into the upcoming years?
So in terms of trends for more of the manufacturing side, I would say is food automation by far, with all the labor issues that we are facing in every scene that we can imagine in the world. So food automation is a big one, just because of those issues, and to facilitate and build capacity and so on. So a lot of companies are looking at it. Government is really good at providing programs to get funding and so on, but it's a big investment, and it's hard when it's companies that's been around for so long and they were doing it a certain way, and to make sure that they buy the right equipment that would work for them. So that's a big trend that you're going to see a lot of more automation in the future, and we see it already with cars and so on. So it's not something surprising, I would say. On the other side of things, trends in food, a lot of protein-based, vegetable protein-based, I should say, products coming out, really healthy options. Traceability, as you said, is the key most important thing right now, because people want to know where it comes from, from farm to table, where did it go and did it get there safe? And, if it's a frozen product, to make sure it was frozen all the way back to the retailers or to the table. So that the traceability, a lot of companies are looking at that to make that process better. And there's so many levels in the supply chain to make sure that's being done, right? So, you have a potato that goes in a bag, but is the bag the good bag for that transport, and the transport, and then there's so many logistics in the back end that I don't think people realize that it's a lot of cost along the way too. So prices are increasing. Well, there's a reason for that, and especially with flooding in BC and everything that's happening, the supply chain is really damaged right now. So prices are going up, which is natural because there's a lack of product, there's a lack of packaging. So that's the trend of traceability is really important at this point too.
Okay, so that traceability and transparency, you certainly help with on the, call it the upstream side, and working with those producers down to the manufacturers. And you talked about the automation that as you said, seems inevitable given the sort of labor situation that we're facing globally these days. But with all of that work going into a local supply chain in many cases, and the manufacturers really focused on the quality, of course, and managing their costs, they want to provide that transparency to their customers. In fact, we see customers increasingly being interested in transparency of their food, where it's coming from, the quality, et cetera. How are you seeing companies sort of address their customers and support their customers to provide that transparency and trust and authenticity of the products that they're providing?
Basically, they're really trying to support that by implementing new technology, basically to trace all that, because it is a big system to try to, some are doing it right now. And of course, it's bigger companies that have, the resources to do so, but smaller companies, there's a lot of new startups that are designing that for smaller companies that they can afford it to do. So that's how they do it. And I mean, the marketing side of things, I think they try to do that on their labels. They try to do that on social media to make sure that their customers know where it comes from, know what the process is, and so on. So I think they're doing it in very different ways. But it's always like, they tried the barcodes that people could scan, and the story of where it goes and where it's at and where it's been and what field it came from. Like they can go really, really deep if they wanted to. So it's all about listening to the customer and seeing what exactly, how far do you have to go for them to be satisfied with your story and where the traceability comes from.
Do you see that, I would say, transitioning from almost a demand by consumers where I just want to know where this is coming from, to also, like, for example, scanning a code on a product to get something that pops up on your smartphone saying, oh, this came from that field over there from, Farmer Jane, and, we like that, to something that's maybe also more entertaining and sort of pulling customers back into the product. You mentioned social media, for example, and a number of the sort of producer entrepreneurs we talk to, they tell us a lot about their customer wants to see authenticity in the product. And there, used to be before COVID that it was much easier for a small producer to get out in public, literally meeting and by word of mouth spreading their authenticity of their product, and they're shifting into social media. Do you see that being successful or being a trend with the companies that you're representing?
So that's a good point, because basically all the tastings in the stores had stopped, right? So that's a good way for explaining your story and getting people to taste it. And that's the most important thing, is people to taste it and change their habits. Humans are creatures of habits, and to change a habit, 66 days. So imagine, like, changing that habit is really difficult. So you have to be front end and center to people to see you all the time, so they don't forget you and get in a habit of, oh, I bought this last week and I want to buy it again. Because even I do that. Like, I want to support local, and sometimes I buy something that's really good, and then you kind of forget about it until you see it again on Facebook, or you see it, on Instagram. So it's really important for the marketing side of things to really stay front center. But the tastings, like even with wine, you want to taste your wine to make sure you like it before buying it. Well, if you don't taste it, if the label's not like funky, like you like, or different, like, you might not buy it. But if you try it, you say, oh, this is good, I'll buy it. So the marketing component is really important. And I don't know where the tastings will always work, because people like to try everything, and people are more adventurous than they used to because they travel more too. So the more you travel, the more you taste different cultures. And also, which is amazing with immigrants, because now we're getting them in our hometowns that we can try the food that we can't even travel right now, right? So it's all that linked together that really works well. And but like, I think social media will always be there, but I think sometimes we're overloaded with emails and overloaded with social media. So you might not see everything that goes by. Like, I have probably 3,000 people on my Facebook. Well, there's stuff I don't see because it's either I don't visit their Facebook, and, there's little things that happens with the technology that you're just like, okay, nobody saw it, or you have to pay to kind of get the outreach you're looking for. And not everybody knows how it works. And especially small and medium businesses, you don't have a marketing person on staff, and to learn all this on your own, it's challenging. So that's all stuff that we try to help with, to kind of say, okay, this is a course to help you learn about this, or maybe have a specialist come in that we can fund, that that can help you put something together as a plan to kind of follow after. So it's all things that we help with in the back end too. So,
well, it sounds like a lot of the what have become now traditional channels that frankly probably really didn't exist 10 years ago, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera. These are platforms of today, but I think, do you see those being also the primary platforms of 5 years from now? Or are you seeing other tech providers come in that are maybe, it's no secret that the sort of the data management practices of some of these groups have come into question. Do you see a trend away from that, or continuing to use these types of platforms?
I think it's going to continue. There'll probably be new ones, of course. With technology, there's always new stuff, but I think it's going to continue for the next few years for sure. And I think other ones will pop up eventually, and new things. Like it's like, the electric car, just, we talked about it forever and then it popped up. So,
Right.
There's going to be talk probably of new things coming up, but by the time it reaches us, it might be a bit later on, right? So
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of the companies that you're dealing with are, as you're saying, they don't necessarily have a tech team involved. So they're looking for essentially technology suppliers to come in. And that's something that you help with in your organization. It sounds like you're sometimes able to fund some of the support for companies and kind of give them a pointer, or even help get technology implemented that gets them exposure into the marketplace.
yeah, for us, the way it works, we don't fund as per se, but we found, like, we know where the funding can be get.
Yeah.
So basically we're really a facilitator. So we direct them with connections or funding that possibly they could get, or provincial reps that can help them in certain areas. So we kind of know the ecosystem, and then we just direct them in the right area to save them time, instead of them going in the internet and spending hours that they don't have to find the answers. So they email us and say, like, I'm planning to do this. Where do you think I could find funding for this? Is this something that's out? And we just hired our first employee after me to kind of help those members kind of even more further down the road, to kind of link them to the right areas to find funding, or consultants, or ingredients, or co-packers. So
along with this sort of these challenges and opportunities in marketing channels, if you will, there's the actual sales channel between companies and the individuals. And of course, traditionally, grocery stores, specialty stores, et cetera, were the primary channels. And as we were also talking about, these are places where people can taste products and really develop their own passion for those products, which sort of changed about 2 years ago. And I think we've seen a tremendous shift in consumers' willingness to purchase online through e-commerce channels. And I'm curious to see, the part of the world where you focus in Eastern Atlantic Canada, there's a fair amount of rural area around there. How do you see these businesses adopting or not adopting these e-commerce channels?
So I know the federal government did do a big masterclass on e-commerce maybe a year ago. It goes by so fast, I'm not sure when, but and I think that helps, because we did have some members that were niched into restaurants examples, so the food service industry, and then with everything that happened, that just shut down. So then they had to look at other opportunities and diversify their selling, the distribution of their product, and so on. So a lot of them did shift to e-commerce. Some are really being super successful. The challenge there's always a few challenges and bumps along the way, is logistics and distribution. So the cost to ship things are very expensive, and they're just getting worse. So what we did at Food and Beverage Atlantic, we did hire a consultant to do a report to see, okay, what's going on in the logistics side of things for transportation for food and beverage in Atlantic Canada only to start. And then what would be the options to look at to help the industry on that end. So the next phase, now we're looking at that with some of the committees and saying, okay, what's the next step and how do we move forward? So in the new year, we're going to do a phase 2 of let's implement maybe this option and this option in a pilot project to see how it goes. Because a lot of trucks are going in full, coming back empty, right? And because of e-commerce, you're delivering, to houses or whatnot, but the pricing is really very high. So that's, the e-commerce is a good thing. It opened new doors, but then, one of my members had to send some spices to a client, and then it would cost more than the product sent. So there's, it doesn't jive. So so the e-commerce, it's not going to go away because I'm buying more like through my members online than I go to a store to buy. And I think that shifted with everything that happened, because I was even getting my groceries delivered. And, it's like I said, like if you do it for a month or two, your habits are there. So now I'm still ordering some of my beer from Nova Scotia that, non-alcoholic beer. Sometimes I want some. Well, I order a batch and then I'm good for a little bit. So I don't have to run to the store, and don't want to be public too much right now. So I think it's going to continue for people that like it and started it. There's going to be a certain demographic that will continue doing e-commerce. And even in businesses, I don't think that's going to go away, just because they see how it really did well and it's working.
Certainly in restaurants, we've seen this explosion in sort of the Western world of food delivery services, which certainly existed before, but obviously became more of an interest area for people that were kind of quarantined at home. I think we've also seen very large grocery stores implementing delivery services or pickup services. This is a little bit challenging maybe for the small, medium-sized companies. They don't have that financial horsepower to get it done. Do you see in the logistics space either it happening or the opportunity for what I might call the Uberization of logistics, where of course, FedEx is always there, but maybe some type of distributed delivery systems that are almost like, you have a supplier that's selling lobster, you just get on this website and send out 3 packs of lobster via that service. Is it happening or not?
Yeah, it is happening. And a lot of, when I did that report, when we did this report and I was talking to different distributors and all that, and there's quite a lot of people that are looking into doing it. And I'm trying to bring all these companies to collaborate and see how we can work and create something that's a pilot project. So basically, I think that restaurants really pivoted during COVID, and they were offering like meals to go, which they never did before, or they would buy their product that they would use in their restaurant and make boxes that you could buy. So example, if they use chicken in their restaurant and they use pasta, or they use they would buy it in bulk, make boxes, and then sell it as a package as a grocery store. So they really changed the way of thinking, even in restaurants, which was really incredible that they did that. So they, and they were selling sometimes even more when they were just doing takeout, because they don't have all the overhead, right, of the staff and so on. So they did special, so the delivery side of things, I think, even with Amazon right now, I see it. Like I bought a few things on Amazon. I'm renovating a house, so I'm buying like knobs that I have to find, old-fashioned knobs. Well, I can't just find that everywhere, but it's people delivering it. It's not even a company. So you see it already that, some people are saying, you know what, I'm jumping on this bag wagon and offering my services as a delivery. And, it's really interesting.
Yeah. It seems like there could be also a natural extension of this transparency, traceability of food products, because once it's one thing if it goes out through FedEx, there's a pretty clear link there. But if this evolves to, I might in my free time be just delivering, produce from the farmer's market. But who do you see? I could imagine that traceability going from a package, a basket of tomatoes that goes along, so somebody can know when it's delivered by the Uber of logistics that it actually also came from Farmer Jane, and there's some trust and transparency there. I'm curious, have you seen any of that type of thing emerging?
I didn't see that emerge yet. Like I think food safety is crucial, and I think companies know, like we're talking about, delivery of meals right now, which is different than, like some products that maybe be more delicate or whatnot, but I think the companies are going to be cautious to who they're going to use as their distributor too, to make sure they have all the certifications and they have, the certain temperature in their van for frozen or, fresh food. So I don't think they're just going to use anybody. I think meal services is a bit different for some reason right now in my head, but like for stuff that, are perishables or, shelf stable is not as an issue, right? Because it's
Right.
shelf stable. You don't need to temperature control it. But when it comes to frozen or fresh or stuff like that, they will be cautious because it can get really in a bad situation.
Yeah, and you touched on something that I guess all these topics sort of skirt around, but food safety, and how is that something that you and your organization get involved with in supporting your companies?
So food safety, we offer probably 20 to 30 food safety courses a year, depending on what the needs are and so on. There's different certifications that you need for different things. So if you're in the province, you need a certain certification. If you go out of province, it could be another one. If you go international, and it all depends who you sell to, right? So, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of money to get certified for certain programs. So, it's for members, like companies, to do this. You have to make sure that you have the customer for it, because you don't want to spend $15,000-$20,000 to get, certified, and then you don't have the customers. So it's, sometimes it's the egg before the horse, or, the chart before the horse or whatnot, but it is what it is. But that's how we do it. And if you're a member, you do get a discount on our training. And if you're a non-member, you can still take the training. It's just a little bit higher in cost. So really once a year, once every 2 years, we do survey or needs assessment of what the needs are out there. And then we have specialists that are certified to give the courses to help educate them and so on.
So on the safety side, it sounds like these types of certifications are really regulatory hurdles that companies need to get over for market, or essentially market entry barriers.
Yes,
it seems, there's other types of quality stamps of approval, if you will. Michelin stars is a well-known example where, it's really all about marketing at that point and the quality of what you're doing. Do you, again, looking at traceability and transparency, I could foresee a future where the types of the food safety training and certifications that you're facilitating might also be a stamp of approval for, if I'm getting my cheese delivered from a really nice boutique craft cheese producer, I might be further encouraged if there's a stamp of approval quality on that. Or wild mushrooms, I would really love to see that wild mushroom supplier actually has a stamp of approval for not picking poisonous mushrooms or something like that.
Yeah,
do you see maybe an opportunity for those certifications to become more than just a hurdle, getting over the regulatory hurdle, but also a marketing opportunity for companies?
Oh yeah, certainly. And I think like if they do sell to other retail stores, they have to have those certain things. So people don't even think about it because they know like the retail stores don't take any food that are certified. You know what I mean? So that's not an issue. It's if it's an e-commerce part, that could be a really good marketing tool and say, we're certified, but not a lot of people are educated on it. So they don't pretty much know what it is, right? So there might be an educational component to be done or a marketing component on the provincial side that they need, or I don't know who would administer the marketing side on that, but it would be to educate. I think a lot of things is about education, and the chain of supply is really complex, and I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think people realize how complex it is to make sure everything's done properly. Like the companies need to record data, and if they get an inspector in to make sure everything's in order and there's no recalls, and there's a lot of logistics. The most important ones that the inspectors look at is the more crucial ones, like meats, dairy. Those are the ones they're going to inspect more because they could cause more harm, right? If it's not good. But like beer, well, they might not get inspected as much because it just came in a few years ago. Like the inspector, like they have to take their data and stuff. So it's not like crucial that you're not going to get terribly sick if it's a bad
Mhm.
beer compared to
Right.
meat, right? So, there's different levels of inspection, but they still need to have that traceability to make sure like we know everything's done properly and they're using the right ingredients and
Mhm.
that they're putting on the label too, right?
Right. And another topic that you're mentioning here, but also has kind of come up through our discussion, is the interaction with large grocery chains and food producers looking to sell to those large grocery chains, which we've heard from, I think, quite a lot of small to medium-sized producers. There's a lot of challenges there. And frankly, some real barriers to entry for small, medium-sized companies. But at the same time, we see the e-commerce side opening up. I'm curious, if you're looking into your crystal ball, say 5 years from now, would you see that maybe the opportunity on the e-commerce side gives a better outlet for these craft producers, smaller producers, and they're not struggling to reach the top of, so they can just sell into a large chain where they've actually got a great logistics network that's provided by several technology companies, and they can sell through e-commerce, and that's maybe a more attractive growth mechanism than aiming to get into a national grocery chain?
I think people need to they have to be diversified, because if something happens with, the e-commerce or the big chains, you have to look at everything, and not too many, but at least a few options, so that if something happens in one area, that you're not stuck, right?
Mhm.
For small and medium businesses to deal with the big retailers like Sobeys, Superstores, Costco, really it's not that complicated in a way. It's not complicated, but you need to be educated about it, I should say. So basically, like, all of those are doing local programs to really get the most local products in their stores. You don't have to be super big to be in those stores. You just have to have the capacity, right? So
Okay.
if you say that you're going to be selling this amount of products and you can't deliver on delivering that product, that's where the issues come, right? So the companies really need to be ready. They need to know what those retailers are expecting, what are the fines they can get if they don't produce on their contracts. So there's a lot of things that they need to know before committing to it, to make sure that everything's okay. But they are more than willing to work with you, like to come. If you present a product, even if it's not 100% ready, they'll say, like, if you do this, this, and this, we'll look at it again. So then they can go back and tweak their labels or whatever, the barcode or whatever they need to do, and come back and say, would this work? Would you be happy with this? And they say, yeah. But then you have to make sure that your capacity is there, because if it sells like hotcakes and you can't produce, then that's where you're going to end up, losing, because your sales are not going to be what it is. And you have to, and because of no tastings, that's another side, is that how are you going to promote your product? Do you have marketing dollars behind to really promote this product so the sales are up, so you don't get kicked out of the store again, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things that they have to think about, but I think it's all about balance. Like, I think if you do e-commerce, and it depends on your product too, like if you have a product that can go, don't put your eggs in the same basket, just make sure you get a little bit diversified, and then whatever works for you. Sometimes it could just be one avenue, but most of the time it's always good to have diversification.
Yeah, certainly.
Mm.
So, kind of going back to the beginning of our discussion, your organization, Food and Beverage Atlantic, really is in the middle of trends, and it's literally your job to help companies understand and sort of perform to these trends to grow their businesses. If you were to look forward 2 or 3 years, what do you see being sort of the interesting and new, both trends and the work that you're doing in your organization to help your participating companies kind of be leaders in the food space following those new trends?
New trends, I think companies need to think outside the box too. Like, moving forward is like, if you create a nice label and it's all about, the cottage that you pick these grapes at or whatever, and then you go to a different market, it's like a new business plan. You have to analyze everything, right? So the trends is all about reading every niche that you're going to look into, because it's all different. Like, from here to Quebec to Ontario, it's all different markets. And they don't understand the language the same way, like something we would say here, they don't understand that maybe in Alberta, like they don't even know what this means, what you just put on your label as a slang or something, right? So I think it's just the companies need to think about trends that way. It's always being up to date because it changes so fast. Packaging, sizes, like, before, you can have people that buy at Costco with big packaging, but some people just want to pick up and go and it's a small package. There's so many avenues that you have to look at. Like there's trends, but there's also just looking at each community and each province or each country and seeing, because it's all different everywhere and it's not the same. And, there was good examples of sunscreen, just an example that somebody told me. And for us, it's protecting against the sun, but in Asia, it's totally a different meaning, the sunscreen. So you really have to educate yourself and do another business plan. We're going somewhere. So because the trends, like even from here to Quebec, like even fashion is totally different. And we get it maybe a year after or two, but now it's a little bit less like that because of the internet. But before, that's what it was. Like it totally was not the same thing. So I don't know if there's specific trends like, plant-based protein for sure, healthy options, everybody's gluten-free, dairy-free, like there's soy-free, like that's the big thing that's happening right now. And that's what we see. But I think packaging is going to be a big one, like sustainability. Right now, our companies are trying to do it, but to find the product to package it with is really expensive. So that's a hurdle they're trying to take, but that's going to continue. People are just wanting to be more environmental friendly.
Right.
So,
it sounds like, everything you're talking about is focusing on a bit more decentralization. It's facilitated by technology, but also the concepts of or issues of sustainability around local supply, which is really your mandate is local supply and distribution outward. And you hear this a lot, packaging is really important to people in minimizing the environmental impact of that. But like you said, I heard it from a lot of different experts that it's hard. If you're not a big company, it's really hard to be, the best in terms of, your environmental awareness and sort of performance on packaging. So it sounds like another great area for technology companies to step in and find solutions for small, medium-sized companies so they can then, feel good about the sustainability of their products.
And then the other side of the coin is food safety. So depending on the packaging you choose, doesn't mean it's going to be food safe, right?
Right.
Like
that's one of those things.
Stuff, like
it's really not optional. I think this is why some of these solutions are still out there, and the Tetra Paks, the aluminum cans, et cetera, they're out there because of safety. They're proven to be safe and reliable. But I'm sure we'll see more evolution in this area.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, it's really been a pleasure having you with us today, Tammy. It's exciting to see all that's going on with the companies that you represent as the Executive Director of Food and Beverage Atlantic. And look forward to seeing more of, your progress next year and have you back on the show again.
Oh, perfect, Jim. Well, it was my pleasure too. And if anybody wants to reach out and have a conversation, my email is tammy@atlanticfood.ca, super easy, or you can call us or find us on the website.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.